Today, I want to talk about some of the rules governing research by starting with the ethical conduct of research. The guidelines that have been developed on use of human subjects, use of animals, technologies like chemicals or radioactive materials, as well as the guidelines that journals use for determining whether or not to publish research, have emerged from a collective effort among researchers and governing organizations of research. Each natural science and social science discipline has its own rules on ethical conduct, which I'll explain later. Just as we study disease in order to understand how a body should work, we can investigate ethical breaches to understand how research should work. The Office of Research Integrity, shown on this slide, compiles a list of case summaries in which administrative actions were imposed due to findings of research misconduct. You can visit the link to see some of these summaries for yourself. They represent the diverse ways in which there were ethical breaches and describe some of the consequences of those breaches. In the next few slides, I will describe some examples. So research misconduct case number 1. This first case is in the field of survey research and political science. It emerged from a paper published in 2014 by Michael LaCour and co-authored with his advisor. LaCour was engaged in research as a political science doctoral student at UCLA. His work was rooted in studies about how the interviewer effect might be observed in studies of public opinion on gay equality. The assertion was that whether or not an interviewer was gay or straight affected the individual interviewee's opinions over a long period of time. His work was hailed as groundbreaking and published in a major journal, Science. The research was featured on major news outlets and became the underpinning of some efforts on equality legislation in California, Utah, and Ireland. Accusations were made about his research not long after it appeared, and his academic advisor at UCLA asked to see the raw data that underpinned his paper. The university needed proof that the study had been conducted. He was unable to provide that data. LaCour was also accused of making up grants that he had received to fund this and other research. Additionally, he did not receive Institutional Review Board, or IRB, approval before the research was done. This shows the paper from Science, which still appears on the website, along with the retraction and the editorial expression of concern. The co-author, Donald Green, requested that it be withdrawn and admits that he shares the blame for not noticing red flags along the way. However, Dr. Green retains his job at Columbia, and LaCour's advisor at UCLA, Lynn Vavrick, is still on the faculty at UCLA. The two researchers who exposed Mr. LaCour, David Brookman and Joshua Calais, intend to redo the work that was conducted. They still feel it is valid to look at the question of interviewer effect and also have concerns about the damage done to the field of gay equality and political science as a result of the misconduct by LaCour. Example number 2. Now, the second case is in the field of biomedical research. It is one that you may know concerning Dr. Andrew Wakefield. A British physician, he was trained in liver transplantation and gastroenterology. He extended his research to study 12 children with autism and claimed that a new gastric syndrome emerged in these children as a result of their exposure to the MMR vaccine, which stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. He published this work along with several other co-authors in The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal. This is the paper, which when you look it up on the Lancet website shows it as being retracted. The retraction was a result of several causes, including the fact that Wakefield did not have approval for an invasive sample collection procedure from the children, and that he failed to disclose financial interests in the outcome of this research. Specifically, Wakefield had been employed previously by parents in lawsuits against vaccine-producing companies. Ultimately, an investigation revealed a significant scientific misrepresentation by a small selective sample that was intentionally conducted to reveal a specific result. The participants were actually children attending his son's birthday party who were paid for their samples. There were systematic failures involved in both conducting and publishing this research. In 2010, Wakefield was struck from the UK Medical Register and can no longer practice medicine. While he and the study have been discredited, the impact to global health is significant. Wakefield was embraced by the anti-vaccine movement, and the consequences have been a drop in recommended vaccinations of children, as well as a consequent rise in preventable diseases. The data were not proven and have furthermore been retracted, but the problem of anti-vax opinion continues. The third case is in the field of chemistry research. The fraud was perpetrated across numerous areas, including 3 papers and a doctoral dissertation, totaling 21 counts of misconduct. Chemistry student Bengu Sezin began her work in 2000 in a laboratory at Dalibor Sames, and in the course of just a few years in graduate school, co-authored papers and made rapid progress in her research. However, her work in analyzing chemical compounds was based on fabricated NMR spectra, sometimes by merging spectra and erasing unwanted spectra peaks with correction fluid. She was also known to sabotage other students' research so that it either reflected her expected results or interfered with theirs. Her work was retracted in the journals in which it was published, but the impact was significant. Sezin's appearance of success marginalized other students in her lab, and this was made worse by the fact that her professor bullied the other students who were less successful. Furthermore, these students worked in vain to reproduce the results that Sezin had gotten, and many of them left their PhD work. Her advisor, Dalibor Sames, is still employed at Columbia University. And on this, as I said on the previous slide, Sezin fled to Heidelberg University, where she received a second doctorate and has failed to respond to any inquiries on the fraud she perpetrated at Columbia. So what are we to conclude from these case studies? First, they can be detected, but it takes time. The research community does respond by retracting papers and refuting the research, but for the research that affects the public sphere, such as Wakefield's and LaCour's, it is very difficult to eradicate the research impact on the public perception of science. These are 3 examples. How common are they in reality? One 2009 study of a very small number of researchers revealed that 1.97% of scientists admitted to fabricating, falsifying, or modifying data, and up to 33.7% admitted to other questionable research practices. A recent book, published on fraud and misconduct in research, analyzed far more papers, ranging across years between 1880 and 2010, and showed that there were 750 known cases between those years. The important question in identifying fraud and misconduct is to define what we mean by ethical conduct. The Office of Research Integrity focuses on 3 major issues: fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in any stage of the research process. The APA extends this to research in human subjects that may also breach confidentiality or have violations of publication and authorship. Like with other definitions, the 3 critical components, fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, are part of the National Science Foundation definition of ethical conduct. They also state that research misconduct does not include honest error or differences of opinion. Finally, the NIH defines 7 main principles that guide the conduct of ethical research, to include the social and clinical value, scientific validity, fair subject selection, favorable risk-benefit ratio, independent review, informed consent, and respect for potential and enrolled subjects. Because the NIH works with human subjects, many of the new items such as informed consent and respect for subjects are added to their ethical concerns. Recently, the RAND Corporation published a report about ethics in scientific research, describing some of the 10 ethical principles common among scientific disciplines. It's a worthwhile read and is summarized in the link on this page. The ebook is downloadable for free. What's important about this document is that it moves from misconduct to integrity, to identify what incorporates research integrity. Integrity is having moral ground and principles, with honesty and accuracy as its foundation. Recently, an article on data secrecy discussed the continuum of research integrity. On the left, in green, are those that represent the gold standard, with open data, open code available to anyone who wanted to look at it more in a study. Pre-registration makes an article available before publication, allowing a broader group of individuals to view it and be able to offer criticism. Version control allows different versions to be time-stamped to observe the past versions, lock old files, and at the same time you can view the final version of a document. Both of these invite people to see the process of how the findings are created and for published work to be vetted before the publication and potential retraction of false information. At the other end in red are the areas of scientific misconduct that appeared earlier: fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. These are known areas of misconduct and among what people normally consider misconduct. In the middle are the gray areas that slip more toward misconduct than integrity. P-hacking and sloppy statistics are ways to use the math behind a statistical analysis to falsely justify a preferred hypothesis. Peer review abuse might be biasing the reviewers selected to be those either for or against a finding. Inappropriate research design would scale all the way from how IRB is conducted to failing to get an unbiased sample for a study, such as in the Wakefield example. Not answering to replicators is to fail to acknowledge that others are unable to replicate the findings that you obtained in a study, such as in the case of Bengu-Sazin. Lying about authorships might extend to adding authors unrelated to a paper to add prestige, saying you published something that you didn't, or misrepresenting the extent to which you contributed to a research outcome. Finally, data secrecy is refusing to allow others to see your data and trying to hide it since it does not fit with what you reported, such as in the case of Michael LaCour. This discussion of research integrity leads to one of the rules that may apply to your campus improvement projects, and that is human subjects. As noted in the presentation on the natural sciences, this is one of several federal regulations that governs the use of humans in a research study. MSU also has its own institutional review board and policy within the Policies and Procedures Manual. For Dr. Garrison and I to teach you about research means that we also have to talk about IRB and how to maintain research integrity. As in two of the case studies, the academic advisors for the graduate students committing the research misconduct were complicit in the acts of misconduct. To teach and learn research means accepting responsibility to be conducting it with the greatest integrity. Other faculty you may have on campus are involved in the efforts to produce research with integrity when it involves human subjects. Dr. Emily Reeves is the chair of the IRB and a member of the West College of Faculty. A second West College faculty member, Dr. Manuel, is also on the committee. Dr. Wynn is a representative from Dacoba. Dr. Willis is on this committee, and he also serves on the IACUC, the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Dr. Christensen is the member from Prothero-Jaeger, and Professor Story is the member from Fane College. Finally, Dr. Choi is a representative from the Gung College of Health Sciences and Human Services. There is an external member from the community, Dr. Michael Agapong, a board-certified pediatrician from the clinics of North Texas. Any one of these faculty members might be helpful to you in thinking about a study and how to design it with integrity. The IRB has a separate set of guidance for student research and class projects, and this guidance is provided to you in class as well as through the link on this page. Let's walk through this flowchart to see if your project for the honors class requires IRB approval. First, is it a part of a thesis? In your case, the answer is no. But if you were doing this for an honors thesis, then IRB would be required if you were using human subjects. Second, is this solely for a class assignment where data will not be used outside of the classroom context and data are destroyed at the end of the project with no further use? What do you think? If you plan to just take the conclusions and then destroy your data afterward, then the answer is yes. But if not, we need to talk to the IRB for guidance. Finally, does the project involve protected populations or the collection of sensitive information? If not, then IRB review is not required, and you can do your campus improvement project without having to take this step. But if the answer is yes, then we need to do IRB approval. So what constitutes sensitive information? This lists potential sensitive information that you would need IRB approval to be able to collect. Examples include information relating to an individual's psychological well-being or mental health, information relating to sexual attitudes, preferences, or practices, information relating to the use of alcohol or drugs, information relating to illegal behavior, information that if released could reasonably place the individual at risk of criminal or civil liability, or be damaging to the individual's financial standing, employability, or reputation. And finally, information that would normally be recorded in a patient's medical record and the disclosure could reasonably lead to discrimination, stigmatization, etc. You need to double check this list for your project and decide whether some of what you collect relates to any of these factors. If you need IRB approval, you will work with your professor to construct your application. An application is available at the link on this page and asks you details about the study and requires some signatures from several administrative levels. Additionally, you may need to provide a consent form to individuals participating in your study. Training may be required to ensure that you know the best practices you should incorporate when doing your study. Remember, IRB approval is not just an inconvenience or a hurdle. It's an important step to ensuring that you conduct your research with integrity.